Hello, and welcome to Bloody Good. My name's Emily, and this is From the Page to the Screen, a show where I look at horror media and the books they're based on to determine just how accurate they are. Today, we're looking at The Outsider by Stephen King and its HBO TV adaptation. The Outsider follows the murder of a young boy named Frankie Peterson. At the brutal crime scene, fingerprints and DNA are found, and eyewitnesses give statements that conclusively lead to the arrest of Terry Maitland. However, all is not as it seems, because Terry is on camera in another town at the exact same time as the murder, and eyewitnesses place him at both locations. Detective Ralph Anderson has to prove Terry's guilt, while coming to terms with the possibility of a supernatural entity named El Cuco being involved. Now I have to put it out there that The Outsider is the reason I got into Stephen King. I saw the trailer for the show and I thought it looked really cool, so I bought the book and I read it in 2 days around my university lectures. I probably wasn't paying enough attention as I should have been, but the book was just that good. I couldn't put it down. So let's dive in. First, we're going to look at our characters. Our main character, Detective Ralph Anderson, played by Ben Mendelsohn in the show, is somewhat different to his version in the book. Throughout the book, he is constantly referred to as having really long legs and just taking up a lot of space compared to his peers. However, in the show, Ralph isn't really presented like this. Now, Ben Mendelsohn's not a short man by any means, he's 5'11", but he's not really played as this massive, intimidating man, and I think it kind of works. It doesn't really give the vibe of kind of a Jack Reacher character. He doesn't need to be really intimidating, so I think Ben Mendelsohn's kind of smaller demeanour, I think it actually really works. And apart from his physicality, another really important change is made with Ralph. In the book, his son Derek is away at summer camp, but in the TV show, Derek is dead. At first, I kind of questioned this change, because it just seemed like it didn't need to happen. But as you watch more and more, I think it actually really works for the show. Because Derek was on Terry Maitland's baseball team, that kind of guilt and unknown really eats away at Ralph as the show goes on, because he can't just go and ask Derek, did Coach Terry do anything to you? In the book, the Andersons don't want to bother Derek while he's at summer camp, so they don't ask him about Coach Terry. But in the show, they just can't. And I think it really raises the personal stakes that Ralph has in this case. Ralph also has to see a therapist after the incident where Terry is killed outside the courthouse on the way to his arraignment. Now in the book, this is pretty much just glossed over, but we actually take the time to spend with Ralph with his therapist throughout most of the episodes. It delves a lot into Derek's death, but it also lets us in a little bit on Ralph's life after Derek's death, including getting really drunk and then getting into bar fights. And I think it just adds this level of humanity to Ralph that you don't necessarily see as much in the book. And I think it just gives Ben Mendelsohn a real chance to shine, because he's a fantastic actor and he really shines in this show. Holly Gibney, played by Cynthia Erivo in the show, is very different to her book counterpart. Now, Holly is a character that features in quite a few Stephen King books up until this point, and I've read all of them and I love Holly as a character. But in the books, she is described as kind of a middle-aged white woman who is a complete nervous wreck and has lots of mental health stuff going on. And this is hinted at in the show. We hear about Holly being experimented on and just sent to psychiatrists to see what's going on with her. And their kind of answer to that is, we don't know what the fuck's up with this girl. So I do like that they have that little inkling towards Holly's troubles. But obviously, Cynthia Erivo is not a middle-aged white woman. But I can't help but imagine Holly as Cynthia Erivo when I read any Stephen King book with Holly in now, because Cynthia Erivo was my first Holly, apart from when I read the book first. Now, Cynthia Erivo plays Holly's quirks really well, and they're slightly different to the book, but I think they work for the tone of the show. In the book, Holly has 9,000 DVDs in her collection, and she talks about them and she brings them along with her and shares them with other people. But in the show, she's shown to have an encyclopedic knowledge of kind of everything, and we're introduced to her watching cars go past on the street, naming their makes and models. And that's kind of the most we get properly into her encyclopedic knowledge. But it's nice to know she still has it. Jack Hoskins is played really well in the show by Mark Menchaca. He's quite a prick, and just throughout the show, you really grow to hate him, and he just plays it really well. His possession by El Cuco is really gross and disgusting, and credits to the special effects and makeup department, because the burn that happens on the back of his neck, and it just gets progressively worse and worse throughout the show. It's disgusting to look at, and it's really well done. And I think it plays out really accurately to the book. Even though Jack is being forced to do what he's doing by El Cuco, you kind of don't feel that sorry for him, because he was a bit of a prick in the first place. There are some minor changes with other characters that I don't really understand why the changes were made, because they don't really add a whole lot to the plot, but I thought it was worth mentioning here anyway. Now, Terry's wife's name is changed from Marcy in the book to Glory in the show for some reason. Terry's lawyer's surname is changed for some reason, and the district attorney's entire name is changed. I don't really know what this serves to the plot, but go off, change names, why not? There's also Andy, a new character to the show, who serves as a little bit of a love interest for Holly as the show goes on. So overall, in terms of characters, I think there are some really worthwhile changes made, especially to Ralph and Holly. But otherwise, I can take or leave the changes made with the other characters. Now let's look at the plot. The show follows the general plot pretty accurately, but there are some massive deviations too. The book is set in the fictional Flint City, Oklahoma, whereas the show is set in Georgia. When Terry is arrested at the baseball game, it's described as a crowd of more than 1,500 people in attendance, but in the show, there are only about 100 people there. A key difference between the book and the show is the circumstances surrounding Terry's death on his way to the courthouse. In the book, there's a lot of discussion around whether Terry should or should not wear a bulletproof vest on his way into the courthouse, and he chooses not to because he wants to seem innocent and like he's got something to prove. And ultimately, it was the wrong decision. In the show, there's no discussion about a bulletproof vest. He doesn't wear one to his arraignment, and like the book, unfortunately, he does get shot. In the book, after Terry's shot in the neck, Ralph gives him the chance to clear his conscience because he knows he's dying, he knows it's a fatal wound. He gives him the chance to confess and clear his conscience. With his final moments, Terry maintains his innocence, and it leaves Ralph in quite a quandary. However, in the show, there is the tough burden of showing a really action-packed sequence in a really short amount of time. So Terry gets shot, and as he's laying there, Ralph doesn't ask anything of the wounded Terry, but Terry takes his last moments to maintain his innocence anyway, and Ralph just listens as he dies. The fallout of the Peterson murder isn't really touched on as much in the show as it is in the book. In the book, we spend a lot of time with the Peterson family as they go through the grieving process after the loss of Frankie. In very quick succession, after Frankie's murdered and Terry is arrested, the Peterson mother has a heart attack through grief. The brother is the one who shoots Terry at the courthouse and is subsequently killed by the police, and the father kills himself. And we do see all of this happening in the show, but it's very quickly passed by, and you really don't spend that time with the Petersons as much as you do in the book. And you don't feel this just dread that is hanging over this family in the wake of the murder. When Holly gets involved into the case and suggests that Terry was a victim of El Cuco, who is a boogeyman, the key to identifying who El Cuco is becoming next is really, really clear in the book. In the book, a massive factor in identifying that Claude Bolton is who El Cuco is becoming is his really prominent hand tattoos, reading cut and must. But this doesn't really factor into the show all that much. We see Claude has these tattoos, but they're not really as prominent as they're described in the book. Once they realise that El Cuco is becoming Claude, and also that Claude has left town to be with his family, the whole gang heads down to where Claude is to meet him and be there to provide an alibi should El Cuco strike again, while basically wearing Claude's face and body. A little difference comes here because Claude is staying with a bit of a deadbeat brother instead of his wheelchair-bound mother. But I think it works still because it's still an unreliable family member who, if they were the one to rely on giving Claude an alibi, are you really going to believe a criminal brother? I don't know. So they still make the right call and head down to see Claude. When the gang have located where El Cuco is hiding and getting ready for his next murder, the whole gang heads down there, and they find Jack Hoskins waiting for them. And in both the book and the show, a huge skirmish outbreaks between Jack and the whole gang as Jack tries to kill them all before they can reach El Cuco. This scene is played out pretty closely to the chapter in the book, apart from the addition of Andy's character and Claude's brother. Now this is a really, really great bit of television, and my heart was racing as I watched this scene. It was just really, really well done. Now after this big gunfight, they find their way into the caves and to find El Cuco. And in the show, Claude shoots it. Rightfully so, it's wearing his face, it's really creepy, and I think Claude, rightfully so, deserves to be the one to shoot it. And then Claude and Holly leave the cave, and Ralph is left alone to have a bit of a one-to-one conversation with El Cuco, before really satisfyingly smashing its head in with a cinder block. However, in the book, Claude is not involved in this final showdown at all, and it's actually Holly who kills El Cuco with something called the Happy Slapper, which is a sock filled with ball bearings, and it's pretty gruesomely described in the book. And I was a little disappointed we didn't get this in the show, because it's quite a defining moment for Holly as a character. It's her kind of step up to being a really cool, heroic character, and it's a bit of a shame she doesn't get to have that moment in the show. I think the show does a really good job of translating the book into the TV show, and I'm really glad it was a TV show and not a film, because it means we've got pretty much 10 hours of content. which means we got a lot of the story translated, where a lot of films will just cut out bits that they don't seem relevant. This included pretty much everything in the book and added more as well in terms of the past victims of El Cuco to just help build the story a little bit more. I think it really elevates the story in a lot of ways. So overall, I do have to say that this is one of my favourite Stephen King books. It was my first one, and it does hold a special place in my heart because of that. And I think the adaptation is really, really strong too. I think it works as someone who's read the book, but also if you haven't read the book, you can still enjoy it regardless of whether you know the story already or not. Now, while the show is really, really good, it is HBO after all, it's not just television, it's HBO. I am going to have to give it to the book here. I think it's just a really phenomenal book from Stephen King. When I was rereading it to prepare for this video, it took me a day to read it because I was just so excited rereading it because I think it's a really compelling story. Have you read the book and/or watched the show? What did you prefer? Do you agree with me that the book's better? Let me know in the comments either way. If you're a Stephen King fan, I previously covered The Long Walk, so check that out. And I'm covering Mr. Mercedes next, so stick around for that. And if you're a horror fan in general, why not subscribe and see what we've got going on? We're a small channel, we'd really like to have you around. Thanks so much for watching.